Alright, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, now it's time to take a look at episode 3 of Deep Space Nine Season 3, The House of Quark. Quark and Rom are gloomily looking over their practically deserted bar. The recent bellicose threats from the Dominion, many families and officers have departed the station, and Quark's business has nosedived. One of his few customers, a drunken Klingon, yells for another blood wine. Quark attempts to demand that he pay his tab, but the Klingon's anger quickly dispels his effort. Enraged, the Klingon draws a dagger and attacks Quark, but stumbles and falls onto his own knife, killing himself. Ugh. While Bashir examines the corpse, Quark assigns notes to Rom that a huge crowd is gathered outside the bar, curious to hear the details of what happened. Hoping to alert by customers, Quark plans to claim to have killed the Klingon in self-defense. Rom finds the idea ludicrous until Quark informs him that the bar's current slump continues. Rom's salary will be the first expense trimmed. Odo asks Quark what happened, and Rom quickly supports the story. Ignoring Odo's skeptical look, Quark tells a thrilling story for the benefit of the crowd, and quickly earns a great deal of notoriety. Miles O'Brien returns home after a busy day and asks Keiko how school was that day, only to be told she had to close it. Due to all the Bajoran families leaving the station, the only students that were left were Jake and Nog, not enough to sustain a school. Keiko tells Miles that she has offered to tutor the boys privately and is okay with what's happened. However, Miles can tell Keiko is upset, so she has lost his school and her main focus in life. Aww. Before long, the bar is humming again. Odo drops by and informs Quark that the Klingon was Kozak, leader of a powerful Klingon house, and warns that Kozak's relatives may come seeking vengeance. Rom is worried, but Quark refuses to back down from his story, proclaiming, "It's not about profit anymore, it's about respect. You see the way they look at me now? I'm not just Venal Frankie trying to take their money. I'm Quark, slayer of Klingons." However, respect makes poor armor a few hours later, when Quark is slammed against the corridor wall by a seething Klingon, Dagor, who claims to be Kozak's brother. Dagor asks how Kozak died, and threatens to kill Quark if Kozak did not die honorably. Quark tries to tell the truth, but quickly realizes that accidental death is not what Dagor wants to hear. With the dagger at his throat, Quark assures Dagor that his brother died honorably in personal combat. Miles prepares cake romantic dinner for the two of them and showers his wife with praise and romantic gestures. The two have a wonderful evening. However, the next morning, Keiko is left miserable again as Miles has to leave for work while she is left with nothing to do but sit around their quarters all day. Aww. Later that evening, Kozak's widow, Grelika, arrives in Quark's bar, asking for him. No sooner does Quark offer her a refreshment than she lunges forward with a tic-tac dagger. Sorry if I butchered pronunciation of that. Klingons is not my strong suit. A terrified Quark dives over the bar and hides himself behind a serving tray. Gulka knows such a cowardly Ferengi would be no match for her late husband, drunk or not, and asks Quark if Quark wants to revise his story. Quark admits the truth, at which point Grilka tranquilizes him with a hypo spray and abducts him. Quark regains consciousness inside Grilka's home on Kronos, where he is greeted by Tumek, Grilka's advisor. When Quark asks who the house belongs to, the older Klingon solemnly tells him that their house no longer has a name, since Kozak died without a male heir. Quark wonders why Dagor cannot inherit the house, and Tumek grows furious. Quark has been duped. Dagor is no relation to Kozak. Instead, he and his family are sworn enemies of Kozak's family, and Dagor has been planning to seize control of their land and property for years. Though he's been unsuccessful to date, his power and wealth have been growing, while their houses has inexplicably been dwindling. Tumek explains that Quark played into Dagor's hands, and Kozak died in an accident, not in battle. The High Council might have granted a special dispensation and allowed Grilka to inherit the house, despite the fact that she is a female. Now Quark having endorsed Dagor's story that Kozak died honorably, no dispensation will be granted, and Dagor is poised to seize control. At that moment, Grilka barges into the room and tosses Quark a large ceremonial robe, demanding that he wear it. Tumek recites some chants, and as Grilka holds Quark by knife point, she and Quark are wed. Miles decides to go and visit Commander Sisko in his office to discuss his problems with Keiko. After trying to lift her spirits with romantic dinners, visits to the hall suite and rearranging his work schedule to give him more free time during the day, he's been able to cheer her up and wants permission to build an arbitorium on the station. Commander Sisko approves the request, allowing Miles to build one in an unused cargo bay. Miles is very happy about this, as Keiko gave up her career to join him on Deep Space Nine. He feels he owes her. Sisko tells O'Brien that he knows that there is nothing harder than knowing that the person they love is unhappy, and the urgent feeling that one needs to do something to address it. Before the Klingon High Council, Dagor is petitioning the Council to cede Kozak's holdings to Dagor. Chiso Gowron appears ready to grant this request when Groka drags her new husband into the Council chamber. She states she performed the Brechtel ritual with Quark, and since Dagor has already established that Kozak died an honorable death, her house now has a male head. Her holdings may, for the time being, remain in her hands. Dagor objects and threatens them. Bewildered and scared, Quark speaks up and says that some mistake has been made, and wonders if he can reach an accommodation with the parties involved, speaking directly to Gowron. Gowron is stunned at the situation, but then Dagor openly challenges Quark, prompting Gowron to interject and silence him. Gowron orders a review of the situation within a few days, keeping the Brechtel in place. Mispronouncing Quark's name, he declares the name of the house well, for the time being, we know as House of Quark. Okay, that's actually pretty funny. Back at her home, Groka berates Quark for opening his big fat mouth, but he rejoins by asking her what their next move is. Groka is lost for a response, and admits that she is making things up as she goes along. Quark asks her, since he's her husband after all, to at least explain to him what is going on. Groka explains that Dagor is angling for a seat on the High Council, and to do that, is seeking to increase his family's power and assets at the expense of hers. Intrigued, Quark asks to examine her family's financial records. Groka is hostile toward the idea and refuses to sully herself with filthy ledgers. Quark points out that she doesn't have a backup plan, and convinces her to try things his way for the time being. Miles is working on plans for the new arbitorium in the Replomat and asks Dr. Bashir for his input. Bashir tells O'Brien it's a good idea and will work on the short term, but that Keiko will be miserable again. He explains that while O'Brien has been trying to provide ways to simply cheer Keiko up, he hasn't been trying to solve the actual problem, but is now turning his wife's profession into a hobby. He then asks O'Brien if he would be satisfied just playing around in a workshop with simple gadgets. O'Brien admits he wouldn't. Bashir tells him that Keiko is a botanist until she can be one again, she will never truly be happy. While pursuing the records, Quark learns that Dagor has been systematically attacking Groka's family for 5 years, using various financial stratagems to devalue Groka's property and to assume ownership of Kozak's debts. As for Frankie, Quark expresses frank admiration for Dagor's cleverness. As a Klingon, Quark is outraged at the idea of another Klingon using financial chicanery to attack a great house. She wonders why Dagor does not instead openly challenge her house, to which Quark answers that in doing so would destroy everything he seeks to seize. Quark presents his findings to the Klingon High Council, who, like Groka, find themselves somewhat at loss to understand what the intricacies of financial scheming. Dagor claims Quark is lying, and presents the abducted Rom as a witness in his defense. Declaring his honor assaulted by the Ferengi, Dagor challenges Quark to a duel. After returning to Groka's home, Quark and Rom decide to beat a hasty retreat and leave the planet. Groka stops them at the front door and is disgusted by Quark's cowardice. She tries to let them run away if they wish. Upon returning to the High Council, Groka stands helpless as her husband is branded a coward and her house is to be handed over to Dagor. But Quark soon appears and readies himself for the duel. As both combatants raise their weapons at each other, Quark suddenly throws his battle out the way, leaving everyone in attendance speechless. Quark points out that he has no hope of overpowering Dagor. Everyone there knows it. This supposed duel is nothing more than an execution. Quark kneels, completely unable to defend himself, and invites Dagor to complete his conquest of Groka's house by slaughtering an unarmed Ferengi, taunting him to tell the heroic story to his children. Grinning victoriously, Dagor raises his mouth to strike, but Gowron steps in and seizes his arm. Gowron did not want to believe Quark's earlier accusations, but Dagor's dishonorable willingness to kill an unarmed man is as good as a confession. Gowron discommodites discommodites him on the spot, and Dagor is ejected from the council chamber. Gower lifts Quark to his feet, commending him for a show of bravery typical of his people. Declaring that special circumstances exist, he allows the House of Kozak to pass to Grilka. Grilka thanks Quark and asks if she can repay him in any way. Quark immediately requests a divorce, and Grilka acquiesces. She slaps him to the ground, shouts, "Negos, Tok Cha, our marriage is done," and spits. "You're a free man." Grilka then lifts Quark off the floor and plants a genuine kiss on him. On the station, Miles tells Keiko about a 6-month agrobiology expedition to an expert quarter of the Gentisa Mountains of Bajor, requests a chief botanist, and he feels she would be happy. He feels she should apply since he's certain she will get the job. Keiko clearly wants to take up the opportunity, but doesn't want to leave Miles and Molly for that amount of time. Miles tells her that she could take Molly with her, and he can visit her all the time since Bajor is only a few hours away by runabout. She still doesn't feel she should go since she made a promise to Miles when they moved to the station, but he tells her that her happiness is more important, and when she isn't happy, then he isn't either. He reminds Keiko that her training and passion are in botany, and implores her to go out and be the best botanist she can be. Keiko happily agrees to apply. Quark and Rom are back on Deep Space Nine, and business at the bar has returned to its previous slump. Rom is still awestruck by his brother's magnificent display of courage in the Great Hall. It reminds Quark that he has now earned genuine respect from many people, least of whom include his erstwhile wife and the Chancellor of the Klingon High Council himself. Glumly, Quark says that respect is good, but Latinum's better. Rom asks him to tell the story again. Quark says that everyone's heard the story already and it won't do any good for business. Rom says, "No, brother, I want to hear it again." At this point, Quark perks up and begins to recount his epic confrontation with Dagor on Kronos. Nice. So let's take a look at some trivia surrounding this episode. Mary Kay Adams and Joseph Raskin reprise their roles of Crook and Tumek respectively in the 5th season episode, Looking for Parmak and All the Wrong Places. Parts of this episode, particularly the scene set in the Great Hall, directly echo Sins of the Father, with a comedic twist. Bring it to mind Karl Marx's dictum that history repeats itself, the first time as tragedy, the second time as farce. Excuse me. Quark mentions an old Ferengi saying about discretion being the better part of valor, a phrase that also appears in the William Shakespeare play Henry IV, Part 1. Tom Benko, who is credited with the story for this episode, is the only person to have written, directed, and edited Star Trek. Carol Lofton does not appear in this episode, but Miles O'Brien asks Keiko O'Brien about him. Groka's beam in command while holding the unconscious Quark is the same as the one Kirk gives to Miles while holding Spock in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. This episode marks the only appearance of Gowron in either The Next Generation or Deep Space Nine without Worf. Despite the many Klingon-centric episodes of the series, this is the only episode Deep Space Nine to feature scenes set on Kronos. The plot will not be depicted on screen again until Broken Bow, the pilot episode of Star Trek Enterprise, almost 7 years later. O'Brien states Bajor is 3 hours away from Deep Space Nine. It's previously stated to be between 2 to 5 hours. That's not inconsistent, as DS9 is stationary near the wormhole, whereas Bajor, being a planet, revolves around its sun, moving nearer and farther from DS9. One of the aliens seen outside the bar while Quark tells how Kozak died is the same as the Ankari seen in the Delta Quadrant. A scene in the script for this episode, but on the aired version, contained a conversation via subspace between Rom and Quark, where Rom appeared quite unconcerned about Quark's 3-day absence. Quark told of his marriage and advised Rom to stay away from the Double Girls, but said he would be back. Rom agreed, but after the conversation ended, he joined the company of 2 Dapple Girls. Quark then told Grilka that he was worried about Rom ruining the bar. Grilka handed him his robe and urged him not to say a word in the Great Hall. In the finish episode, action on Kronos jumps straight from the end of the wedding to the hearing before the High Council. Grilka's strong advice could explain her angry look when Quark does start to speak. So So overall, I think this is a pretty interesting episode, and honestly, I kind of enjoyed the A story more than the B story, but hey, that's just me, so there you go. So overall, I give The House of Quark 4 warp cores out of 5. Well, anyway, tune in a bit as we look at the final episode, review of the day, Equilibrium. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.